So we already know that home prices are keeping first-time buyers on the sidelines, but how about the cost of ownership that they don't tell you about? Think maintenance, property taxes, insurance payments. All of those are piling up, and now the average homeowner is paying nearly $16,000 per year for these hidden costs. Jackie, I come to you, and you've heard me talk about this before. When I was a homeowner, the value of my home kept going down, but my insurance was going up, my property taxes were going up, my maintenance was going up, and I kept looking at myself like, how is this happening? How is this possible?
And I think that's a reality for a lot of people. It has just become a lot more expensive. And so, you know, what used to be a problem of biting off more home than you can chew with respect to your mortgage, for example, you've got to take into account all of these costs as well, especially if we're headed into some potentially rocky times, right? You don't want to see people lose homes or make a bad decision as a result of that. And that sort of brings me back to this notion that Dagan brought up the other day, which is, again, kind of touting this idea that everybody should be a homeowner, that it's part of the American dream and it's sort of a God-given right, and we've got to figure out how to make sure that everyone can be a homeowner. The last time that happened, it led us to the subprime mortgage crisis. And there were a couple of presidents who were in on that game that led us to where we had the bubble burst in that way. And so, you know, I wonder, you always bring up the idea of maybe you shouldn't be an owner and you should take that money and invest it in the stock market. Maybe we have to get our heads around the fact that some people will be destined to be owners because that's their financial situation, and some people just won't. And there's got to be a certain amount of acceptance around that, too.
Brian, Marcus Lemonis, though, would look at me and say we should encourage as many people, if not all, to be homeowners because it's the best way to build long-term generational wealth.
Well, I think it makes you a more independent person when you have your own property. Then you start thinking about, what do I do to improve my property? You get mad when people increase your taxes. If you don't have property, you don't get hit by property taxes. You never get mad about that. So I do think independent ownership does matter. But it's not the dream for everybody. Like, it definitely is not. I'm generationally bound. As a Gen X guy, home ownership was just part of my view of what it meant to be an American. But I know Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever, they don't necessarily think that way. So maybe we shouldn't be asking them to conform to that view, but I do get nervous about it. Because when you don't own stuff, then you look to other people to give you stuff more often than if you own things. And so that's like the cultural issue that gets me, Taylor.
Yeah, Dagan, weigh in.
The largest U.S. subsidies tied to personal behaviors that the government tries to encourage, like families, like having kids. The biggest one is buying and owning a home. In terms of, it's like $500 billion a year, roughly, that goes toward subsidies, mortgage interest deduction, property tax deductions. This even includes with the state and local tax cap. And particularly the backing of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So it is not encouraging, buy a home, form a family, that is healthy. You should be able to do that if you have a good job. That is the detriment of what has happened in this country is that everybody thinks that it's a way to get rich and that like, homes always go up in price and you will always, wildly outpace inflation. And it is that mania that has kind of gripped the United States. And it's quite frankly shocking that it came back so quickly after the blow up in 08, 09 that went on until even 2012, that it was like just money pouring in. And right now, we went through the cost of insurance and maintenance. That is another reason why you have to be ultra careful, putting your own money on the line and trying to get into a home that you know you can't afford just the monthly payment on, because a realtor will try and squeeze you in to some property that you don't even like. And then you get stuck with it because home prices are falling right now. And that is the vice grip of the affordability problem, because people who own these homes, particularly who are already underwater, don't want the prices to fall. What, more than 53% of homes are falling in price year over year, according to Zillow. But the people who can't buy need those prices to come down.
Cheryl, desperate for your thoughts on Tesla, because we have to pivot. So Tesla just got approval for robo-taxi services in Arizona. Now, Tesla CEO Elon Musk said earlier this year he had hoped that Tesla robo-taxis would cover half the U.S. population by the end of this year. That's a little far stretched because it's November. We're not quite there yet. Would you do a robo-taxi?
They're coming. No, it's the evolution of the helicopter. Right now, for the 2028 Olympics, for example, in Los Angeles, a company has just gotten approval. They're working with the FAA, obviously, because of the airspace issue. And these are going to be basically robo-taxis. It is going to happen. And this is technology. This is the future. They're quieter.
She saw your car and upped you a plane on this one. Okay.
Yeah,
Love it.
No, it's happening. So, and I think that, the biggest thing is going to be our airspace is getting crowded. We'll talk about that later when we talk about the special I've got tonight. But the airspace is crowded. That is an issue with drones, private planes, commercial aircraft. But it still is going to happen, and it's going to happen quicker than you think.
I love it. Let's do it.